Hey, thanks for listening to Dragon Wagon Radio. If you're enjoying this show, check out dragonwagonshop.com and get yourself some sweet merch while supporting your favorite indie podcast network. That's dragonwagonshop.com.
It's the greatest mystery in literary history. A divisive question with highly contested answers. Who was the writer behind the pen name William Shakespeare? Welcome to Don't Quill the Messenger. Here's your host, Stephen Sable.
Welcome, fellow Quillers, and happy anniversary. This is our 126th regular episode and the 5th anniversary of Don't Quill the Messenger, the official start of our 6th season. And of course, as usual, for our anniversary episode, I welcome to the episode our own producer, Jake from Dragon Wagon Radio. Jake, happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary to you, Stephen. Happy anniversary to everybody out there, all the Quillers, and thanks for still being here. If you've been here from the beginning, we appreciate you. If you're fairly new, welcome aboard. And I'm excited. I always enjoy these anniversary episodes where I get to come and really just dumb down the show as much as I can.
You know, Jake, it's crazy to me to believe and to think back over the last 5 years and to remember sitting in your makeshift recording studio in your apartment in Burbank all those years ago, recording some of the very first episodes, and to look back and see how far we've come, and 126 regular episodes, more than a dozen bonus features, and a few special episodes too along the way. Puts us at, close to almost 150 recordings over the last 5 years. It's pretty incredible.
It is incredible. And it's such a wide array of, we were going to talk about stats, and this is a stat I should have got. I was going to say it's such a wide array of guests as well. The amount of names and voices and backgrounds and research that in total makes up what is Don't Quill the Messenger right now is really astounding. I'd be curious to how many guests in total there have been.
If I had to do the math in my head, keeping in mind that there are certain guests who have had multiple episodes, we've had at least 4, maybe 5 episodes with Hank Whittemore.
Right.
I know Earl Showerman did 7 or 8.
Annie.
My wife has done 7 or 8.
I'm on. I've got to be 3 or 4 now, at least through the anniversaries.
So I would have to say it's got to be very close to 100 different people, if not, at least 90 or more.
That's kind of where I was placing it, somewhere in that range. Well, listen, next anniversary I'll remember to do the math on how many.
Yeah, that would be a great number to look it up. Because, it would be fun to know. And, we did have for a long time, we had this almost, friendly rivalry going on between Annie and Dr. Earl on who would have had the most episodes under their belt. I think Annie holds the title right now, but to tease a little moment that I'll be sharing later in this episode, we may see Dr. Earl back on the series this coming year and resume the rivalry.
Oh, that's exciting. At some point, it needs to end in an actual Shakespearean sword fight, right? They need that duel.
I have the weapons.
Yeah, I'm sure you do.
We do live close enough.
I'm sure you do.
That could be a live episode.
There
right
it is. Just like a fencing episode.
Well, we could do a little bit about stage combat.
There we go.
How important that is to the Shakespearean canon.
There you go. See, look at this. Look at this. Never not producing. NNP, baby.
And looking back over this last year, this 5th season, it's exciting to see some of the milestones that we have hit. Based on the numbers that I looked at most recent, I know you have today's numbers literally as we're recording.
Yes.
But we have now combined over 140,000 unique downloads from more than 118 different countries or recognized territories of the world.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, just to have any reach at all whatsoever is astounding. But to know that even if it's one person that far away, you know, in whatever remote country that, you know, we would have never imagined anyone would ever care, to know that like somewhere out there they tuned in, even if it was just an episode or two. It's astounding.
Even, you know, we even have some downloads that recorded from areas of the Middle East, which was really shocking to me, because I wouldn't have thought that like some of the Arab countries that they'd be interested in Shakespeare at all. But we have some from areas like Saudi Arabia.
Yeah,
and
I've seen that.
The United Arab Emirates.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is kind of incredible to think about, that we are reaching people all over the world. And as you say, even if it's only 1 or 2 listeners in those countries, it's astounding what modern technology is able to do to connect us and to connect people of like minds or who have similar interests, such as all of us who are members of the Quiller Nation.
Well, you know, I'll talk about it a little bit later ad nauseum, because I've had my own sort of journey this year with the authorship mystery. I keep harping on this over and over again. You can attest to this when I was having you record commercials for Don't Quill the Messenger for other Dragon Wagon shows and for other outlets, where like I really can't stop harping on information and the ease of information, and how, you know, I think we even like scripted it in the commercial for you, where like nowadays we have all truth in our hands at all times. Like you can have the truth of anything you want to know in your pocket. Yet still misinformation runs rampant in today's society. So it's so easy to imagine how we all could have gotten it so wrong 400 plus years ago, because like there was no possible way for actual truth that did not have to go through various channels and around various walls and through various positions of power to, you know, for any information to travel around the world. Whereas nowadays it's just literally straight from the horse's mouth, and the horse in this instance is you, of course, Stephen.
Well, you know, that's a good point, because if you look at, I agree with what you're saying, and obviously, you know, the totalitarian state of what England was in the Elizabethan and Jacobean times is an important note as to how and why information could be controlled so securely. And the latest bonus feature, in fact, Is Edward Dead, is a lot about how there is information missing, or there are documents that don't exist, and whether or not that information was scrubbed or people didn't know or whatever is part of that bonus feature, that 2-parter, which I'll be finishing next month. But even today, though, it could be argued that the channels of information are controlled by like 6 people in the world. When you look at the media conglomerates and what they own and what their holdings are. And, you know, there's a lot of talk today about AI and all of the fake stuff that is being generated and being put out there, and censorship of different search engines when you type in a phrase or you type in a set of words, and there are programmers on the other end of that who are saying, well, we're just going to squash that and instead send you over here. So we haven't left that, ironically, after all these centuries. If in fact, it might even be worse now than ever before.
I've been obsessed lately with information literacy. And I think that it's like we advanced too quickly. We never learned how to truly understand the things that we see and the information we're told in a analytical way. And now we've rushed beyond teaching information literacy to the point where things that some people might see on the internet and go, well, that's obviously not true or not real or not authentic. A giant percentage of the rest of the world might go, oh, well, that's that. Hey, I saw it on the internet. And it's like, we don't have the ability to actually decipher a lot of like reality versus entertainment versus, you know, satire, you know, and so it's that this is today in 2024 with all the information, all the technology, everything we have, and stuff like Snopes exists. You can easily go and look to see what is and is not real. And there are people out there diligently trying to ensure everybody has the ability to decipher fact from fiction. But it clearly didn't exist at a time when everybody went like, yeah, no, guy from Stratford, that makes sense. Look, his name is kind of similar. Who else could it be?
Well, I think what you're saying is true, that there is a certain sense of people not having maybe the proper education or the skill set.
Sure.
Never being taught how to fact check. But the ability, the tools are all there, yes. But I also think that we have to admit, and I think that this is true about the Shakespeare authorship mystery and has been true for several hundred years now, is there's also a laziness involved.
Well, that's
when
and
people,
that's yes.
They just accept what they've been told and they go, I don't have the time, the energy, or it just doesn't truly matter enough to them.
That's kind of what I mean.
And dig any deeper.
Yeah, that's kind of what I mean when I say like information literacy. It's not necessarily like, oh, they haven't been educated on the tools. It's like we as a species in evolution, we never developed this thing that was so crucial to have inherently. We didn't develop this thing that we needed before we ended up with the technology that we have.
Well, but if I saw it in an X post that was reposted by a friend, it has to be accurate, right?
Sure, of course. Well, that also, now you're getting into like social bias and lots of that stuff, which is a part of everything as well. Absolutely. There's, you're a lot more likely to agree with somebody that you already like than somebody that you don't like. Whether or not
or
they're
if
true,
you want to take it to an Elizabethan or Jacobean setting, you're most likely to agree with somebody whose favor you require in order to succeed, in order to thrive.
Yeah, especially
and that's not very different than today either, right?
No, it's just a much more extreme version considering the alternative.
Yeah, and it's wonderful that we have reach this milestone of, and we will before I don't know if I had to estimate, it looks like by the end of the first quarter of this coming season, we will have achieved more than 150,000 downloads.
Oh, right. Yeah.
We are averaging more than 30,000 downloads per year. And according to year over year numbers, that YOY, that's very consistent, which means we're running very strong from year to year.
Right. But
fellow Quillers, we do have room for growth.
Absolutely.
So you need to be sharing the series with others.
That's actually a good thing to bring up, because I was telling Steve before we recorded, one of my goals is, I know that there's a lot of crap at the end of the episodes. Okay. Steve and I spoke about this at the end of last year. There's a lot of crap.
Slow your roll there, right? Turbo. Don't call my closing stuff crap.
Listen, it's like we have all the information that is necessary, by the way, about the Quiller event that's happening. But then it's also like there's a Facebook page you go to, but then there's also other social media, and then hey, there's a Patreon. And by the way, if you want, you can sign up for a mailing list, and there's an email. There's a lot of crap that we throw at you at the end. This year, one of my focuses for sure is I would really love it if people took the time, it's not a lot, a few minutes, to leave ratings and reviews on Apple Podcasts. This past year, in its entirety, I think we only got 3 or 4 in the entire year, and that's down dozens from the years prior. And I think a lot of that does happen when you get to this point. A show has been around for this long. We have our listeners who've, either found the show throughout the years, and then that sort of slows down and we kind of just have our core group. And while the core group is incredible and they're the reason why we can continue going, people get complacent as far as like, well, I don't need to leave a review. I left one 5 years ago. Well, you can go update your review. If you have left one years and years ago, you can leave another one, because let's be honest, the show has also changed quite a bit throughout the years and evolved in certain ways. And so you can update your review and it'll bring your review right to the top, and it'll just be like getting a new review for the show. New reviews are what give our almighty algorithm that we all have to bow and praise. It give the algorithm a little nudge as far as suggesting the show when people listen to shows of a similar nature, whether it's in the same genre of like historical literature, whatever the categories are that Don't Quill falls under. The algorithm will suggest it to other podcast listeners, and that's what we want. We want that suggestion. So please consider leaving a rating or review on Apple Podcasts. If you're not on Apple Podcasts and you're like, I don't listen there, well, everybody can download iTunes. It's really easy. You just go to like iTunes.com. I'm sure you can download it on any computer. You can make an account. You can use iTunes to just find Don't Quill the Messenger and then leave a review there. And then you can uninstall and delete iTunes forever. You don't need to stick it around. But I really, really hope people will consider doing that because it will help the show out quite a bit.
Well, there are actually, admittedly, there are two levels to this. One of them is, and I will ask, okay, all fellow Quillers, raise your hand if you turn off the episode before all those
Right.
final comments, all
Right,
of the
of course.
crap, as Jake calls it,
Yeah.
at the end. And if you're one of those people, raise your hand right now. But also one of the things, and I think this is sort of a double-edged sword, right, is so many of our listeners find the contact and they send an email directly, which we're going to, every year in this episode, we go through and we read some of the responses that we've received over the year.
Yeah.
And we're about to do that today. But I think some of the issue is people send their comments to us directly.
Right.
And not thinking about, but if the public can see my comments, then it might help spread the Quiller Nation.
Right.
So what Jake is saying is do both. I want you to keep sending your emails to me at contact@don'tquillthepodcast.com, but also post those reviews and those comments that you have to those open forum sites so that other people can find us and join the nation.
I can also see here, and by the way, I want to read a couple of these Apple reviews that we did get this year, but we'll do that in just a moment because first I do want to talk about Spotify. There are a lot of listeners. I can see the numbers here. We've got, well over 1,000 Spotify listeners who maybe go like, yeah, like I said, I don't use Apple Podcasts. I use Spotify. That's how I get my podcast. Spotify has now incorporated, they call it a Q&A, but essentially on every single episode of Don't Quill the Messenger on Spotify, you can go and just leave a comment on it. There is a stock question that Spotify asks unless we go in and change it for every individual episode. And that stock question that Spotify has is, what did you think about this episode? And so while I'm probably not going to be able to go in and ask a specific question for everyone, even just what'd you think about this episode is a great call to action where in Spotify, you can go and you can leave a comment directly on the episode. What's great about that is on my end, I can click, hey, make this public so people can see it. And once again, it's all about the algorithm. It'll increase engagement. It'll help bring Don't Quill the Messenger more to the forefront of Spotify podcast users. And I can bring them to the attention of Steven, who can address them on the air, which is always super fun. So I do want to announce, and for those who don't know, Spotify does now have a Q&A feature where on any episode you listen to of a podcast in Spotify, you can go right to and comment directly on it. And if you do that, we'll read them. I'll make sure.
Before we dive into some of the emails and reviews that we've received over the last year, I kind of want to go quickly down through a list because we mentioned some of the countries in the world where people are downloading the series and downloading episodes of the show. And obviously, the top location in the world is the United States.
USA. We're number one.
Yeah.
We're number one.
Indeed, and followed very closely by the United Kingdom.
Right. They're okay.
It's no surprise that Australia and Canada are number 3 and 4.
Oh, is that what it says for you? Because I have alternate facts, as we've learned is a thing.
Really?
I have Canada, Germany next, and then Australia.
Really? So Germany has in the last month or so increased,
which
exponentially,
and that might literally be one listener from German who just listened to all 100 episodes because it's about 100 download margin. So it could be that,
That is true. And sometimes, folks, you make that difference because there are some of you who find the series and then just binge it like Netflix. Which is fine. We love when you do that. That's great. But you're right. To be honest about stats, that could be exactly why just in the last month or two, Germany has started rising to the top. Ireland and Sweden, and then New Zealand. And we'll be mentioning Dean Bradley, who's one of our listeners down in New Zealand. later in the episode.
I'm also showing Thailand and Japan in there as well, in the same range.
Those have also now started rising up in the list then.
Yeah.
Because what I have from about 6 weeks ago is Portugal and Norway.
Right. Yes. Yeah. I'm seeing all that.
Mexico and Spain, Greece, Guadalupe, which was a surprising one to make it in the top 25.
Sure. Yeah.
Netherlands doesn't surprise me. France doesn't surprise me. We're big in Europe. Chile,
Yeah.
Poland, Belgium, Denmark, South Korea. How come North Korea is not on this list, I wonder?
You'd think that they'd be more interested.
Cyprus. I love that one. Cyprus in the top 25.
Yes.
Brazil.
That's great.
And Italy is what I have. Followed by at the bottom of the list of 25 is Finland. So there you have it, fellow Quillers. You were literally located all over the world, and those top 25 countries, obviously some of them make sense because they're primarily English-speaking countries, but it's fantastic as well to know that we have listeners who are in countries that primarily speak other languages,
right?
But are tuning in and listening to the series.
It's also really nice to know that we have those people there, so that way if we ever travel, we could just be like, hey, can we come stay with you? And then we always have a place to go. There's always going to be a home cooked meal somewhere all over the world. They'll just welcome us in with open arms. I assume they'll let us sleep, in their second best bed.
Nice. That was really good. I like that. So you heard it here, fellow Quillers. If you would like to host Jake or me on your second best bed in your home in a foreign nation, please send that email to contact@don'tquillthepodcast.com with your invitation, and we will start booking our travel arrangements.
It's just a world. Don't Kill the Messenger world tour. It's just like it's a podcast. We do a live podcast, but just for that person in their living room, like just.
It's been done before.
There we go.
Do you remember Quiller Clare?
Of course, yeah. I remember.
Annie and I went and visited the Turks and Caicos Islands, and in Quiller Clare's living room, we recorded an episode of the show. So there you go. So it has been done before. It could happen to you, ladies and gentlemen. Send your invites now.
Were there any other stats that you wanted to tout before we get into some of this talk back?
I wanted to talk about, 5 years is a giant milestone in itself. And so kind of wanted to look back just a little bit beyond this last year as to where we are and where we've come. And talk about some of the episodes that are ranking near the top of the list of most popular, the ones that have received the most listens. And of course, that could be some people are going back and listening to them more than once. It could be some of it is about the fact that when you find the series, you maybe have a tendency to go back and start at the beginning, which I would say to everybody is a wonderful thing to do, but it's not necessary. It's not like a Netflix series. And I would encourage you, if you're sharing this series with someone, to tell them to listen to the last, most recent episodes. And then as they go back and listen to the earlier episodes, to kind of mix them in as they're catching up and to not be worried about that they need to be all in order.
Can I give a second opinion of that suggestion?
Sure.
That if you want someone to listen to the show because you listen to it, I would have them listen to whatever episode is your personal favorite, because then you can have a conversation about why you like that episode afterwards, and you'll more likely create passion and excitement because of your own excitement and passion, and it'll be a little bit more infectious. So I would suggest that regardless of whether it's old, new, recent, or from season 2, whichever one is your favorite, that's what I suggest. Hey, listen to this episode. Because I have a few of those where I always tell people, go listen to this episode because it's the one that really sticks with me a lot.
Well, now we'll give them a little list of some of the ones that have been the most popular. Obviously, the first 8 episodes have some of the highest numbers. That makes the most sense because people do go back and start from the beginning, and they're going to always be generating more listens over time.
Right.
Because they've been up the longest.
Yeah. And people that go back, they listen to the beginnings, like we talked about.
But here are the top episodes outside of those first 8 episodes in chronological order, not in order of download numbers. So one of the highest in 2019 was Just a Few of the 100 Reasons.
Of course.
With our friend Hank Whittemore.
I think that was his very first appearance, if I'm not mistaken.
I think possibly, ironically, the other one from 2019 is October. And it's Monumental Conversations.
Right. Yep.
Also, our friend Hank. So he's a popular guy, obviously, and a popular guest, and he holds the title for 2019. In 2020, Catherine Chilgen came on, and we did Shakespeare Suppressed, and that episode continues to rank super high in the numbers, and always has, dating back to when it first was released in May of 2020. In 2021, I have a Patsy by Another Name. Oh, no, a Patsy by Any Other Name.
Any Other Name,
the title.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, that was May of 2021. And then in August of 2021, An Honorable Dedication was and still is a very popular episode, but one of the largest in 2021 is Begin at the Begin.
Yeah, that's
our friend Dorothea Dickerman, and that episode continues to rank super high. It was one of the episodes we still receive a lot of emails about when people first discover the series and they get to that episode. We get a lot of emails about that episode. It was one of the more revolutionary revelation episodes. Oxford's Voices, Bob Prechter, February 2022. Huge numbers, and hit huge numbers right from the get-go, and has maintained some really high download numbers. And also in 2022, Architectural Deconstruction with Luís Souza. And I believe that still is the longest episode that we have ever recorded.
Really?
And good news, fellow Quillers. Luís just recently contacted me and has been doing some work on some new topics, and he'll be coming back this season for the 6th season. So those of you, obviously there are a lot of you who really enjoyed that episode because it has super numbers. Luís will be coming back, so look for that as a highlight of our 6th season. And then numbers for this last year, 2023, the best numbers so far have included Handwriting on the Wall, April of 2023. And it is no surprise that Taboo to Doubt in May of 2023 with our friend Elizabeth Winkler is one of the highest of the year. And another little teaser for all of you is Elizabeth will also be coming back as a guest this season and doing another episode with us about some of the results of her book and some of the findings that she's had on her tour of promoting the book, as well as some hints about her next book project. So that will be a very exciting episode coming up in the 6th season. While we're teasing the 6th season, I mentioned Earl Showerman and visited with Earl back in August when Elizabeth Winkler was here in Southern Oregon for a week. And Earl has some new work that he has been doing, and we're going to see about getting him back for an episode this season. Perhaps he can reclaim his title as the most frequent guest of the series.
Nice.
That will then inspire my wife, Annie, to come up with a new idea for an episode for her return as well to keep the competition going.
Right.
And even though it just posted in September, so it hasn't been out there that long, and it will take some people who are listening in order to get to it. In September, Catherine Chilgen returned, and she did The Queen's Favorite Playwright with me. And that is gaining ground at the fastest pace right now of all the episodes in 2023.
That's great.
So there you have it, folks. That's what it's looking at. A little more teasers before we get to our emails and reviews. One thing I do want to say, Jake, is that, and if you look at the list that we just covered of the most popular episodes over the years, one we have always found here at Don't Quill the Messenger is episodes addressing the Tudor succession theory have been and continue to be some of the most popular episodes of the series.
Is it because it's the most contentious sort of subject amongst authorship doubters?
I don't know if that is the reason. What I believe... here's what I do know. It is the topic that more people ask for episodes about.
Right. It
is the topic that gets the highest number of listens when we do have an episode about that topic.
Right.
And generally, especially from people who are brand new to the mystery.
Right.
So it appears to me that it could be maybe that there's, the scandal of it, the contentiousness about it, that is appealing. But I think what it is more that, secret babies and potential incest only add to the mystery and are intriguing as potential reasons for the Shakespeare brand having been created.
It's rife with drama.
Right. And new people who are newly discovering the mystery, they're not scholars. They haven't been diving into all the books yet. They haven't, they're new to it. They're discovering it. Yep. They're mystery buffs.
Well,
and this adds layers of intrigue to it, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So along those lines, another guest who will be rejoining us for an episode this coming season is Bill Boyle, who obviously for a very long time has been a successionist, we'll call him, because the whole Prince Tudor name tag doesn't really work for me.
Okay.
Because I think that Jim Warren put it best when he called it, the Tudor succession theory.
Right.
And I think that's a better way to phrase it, because then that encompasses all of the Prince Tudor theories that maybe are out there. And anyway, Bill Boyle has been a long-standing proponent that is the secret key to the mystery. And so we'll be having him back again for another episode this coming season.
Well,
Bill Boyle, who recently, congratulations, Bill, who recently was awarded Oxfordian of the Year back in November, I believe. So we'll be having him on. And then we'll be sharing some ideas with the amazing Mystico. He's a Shakespeare mystery blogger who is developing quite a following with his work, and we'll be getting him on as an episode this coming year. So with a lot going on for 2024, our 6th season, and super excited about what we're going to be able to offer you, Quiller Nation.
All right, you want to check out some of these reviews from the past year?
Yeah, let's hear what folks have had to say over the last year about the series and about certain episodes.
Do some reviews and we'll do some emails. So here's a couple quickies. This one comes from Sara Lancer. Listen, this is what I'm talking about with these app reviews. Is they don't need to be novels, okay? This is simply, the subject is Onward, 5 stars, and the entire review is just the best. I mean, doesn't get any more simple than that. Thanks, Sara. That is incredibly kind. Straight and to the point. Boom, 5-star review in the bag. This one, now, in fairness, this one came for 2023, but we might have read it. I might have read this on last year's show, because I think last year's show, we did it a little bit into January, and it came in right in the beginning of January. This one comes from Vangloria 54 in Great Britain. 5 stars, excellent resource. I'm really grateful to this podcast for so much fascinating content on the Shakespeare authorship issue. It's pointed me to some great books, and it's so interesting hearing about the findings of some really remarkable researchers. Keep it coming, please.
I'm not sure if you did read that at last year's anniversary episode, and if you did, I'm going to be consistent, I hope, when I say I love her screaming.
I know that. I think that's why I remember
Gloria. That's awesome.
I know. I think that's why I think I did it, because I remembered the screen name. I think we might have had this conversation. I think there's a glitch in the matrix right now for everybody. Okay, here's one that
deja vu is happening.
Yeah, so we're not. Listen, this is proof that we want to engage in any criticism. This one comes from the U.S. This was the beginning of last year. It's from MKD Hunter via Apple Podcasts. 3 stars. The subject is engage in debate. This show presents the case for only one side of the debate. It's compelling to hear, but why not present the rebuttal? I encourage listeners to look up other perspectives on the debate, which makes the authorship question a far more satisfying exploration. The debate on YouTube between Sir Jonathan Bate and Alexandra Waugh is a good place to start. When you only talk with people who agree with you, it's a limited perspective on richly nuanced history. So this person would like to hear more of, and I think this is the problem is the rebuttal, I guess what MKD Hunter is referring to is the Stratfordian rebuttal, is my guess.
I'm not sure how to interpret that, but I would respond by saying I would love any Stratfordian to come on the series as a guest, and as anyone who listens to the series knows, that we have had many guests who don't agree with the Oxfordian theory.
Sure.
We've had many guests who don't agree with portions of the Oxfordian theory.
Right.
We've had guests support Bacon. We've had guests support Marlowe. We've had guests who didn't support anyone, but came on to share expertise about the topic of Shakespeare.
Right.
So we've had, those who are what I would call orthodox believers, but their point of them being on wasn't to engage in a debate. The point of them being on was to share something that we do have in common, which is a love for the work.
Right, of course. And through that work, the picture of the author can potentially become clearer.
Indeed. And, one of the guests from last year that we had on was Cassidy Cash, who has her own podcast about Elizabethan times. And Cassidy made it very clear that she believes in the Orthodox version of the story. And, when I invite guests like that and I'm able to engage in, email back and forth to get them scheduled, one of the things that we talk about is that I always, and my mother raised me to be a good host. It's an Italian thing. And I always treat every guest with the utmost respect and courtesy. It's never a gotcha thing.
Right.
That's not how we operate here at Don't Quill the Messenger. So I hope that MKD has seen that over the series, and we hope to continue that throughout the series.
Absolutely. But thank you so much for your review. We really appreciate your honesty. We appreciate you taking the time to leave it. We also, by the way, we hope you're still listening. We hope that you're still here with us. All right, last one from Apple Podcasts here. This one comes from Haminati, Haminotty, Haminati. 5 stars, not so stuffy Puritans is the subject. Shakespeare the Puritan by Douglas Wilson introduced me to the authorship question. The intertextuality of De Vere's Juvenilia and the canon convinced me of Oxford's authorship. Anderson's Shakespeare by Another Name made me an apologist. Hank Whittemore's Shakespeare's Treason has me leaning towards the succession problem as a motivation for the sonnets. Don't Quill the Messenger has me ever intrigued as it introduces me to new research and threads in De Vere's life that are coming to the public consciousness at the right time. I've listened to every episode over the past 3 weeks. Wow. Keep the episodes coming. Thankful that this podcast does not analyze the text as though the author has not imbued his yearnings, regrets, friends, and foes into the very text he labored over for so long. So there you go. That comes from Haminati.
Every episode in
3
weeks. That's got to be more than 100 hours a week.
If there's 100 and...
Thank you, Haminati.
Yeah, this was middle of the year, so there probably would have been 110 episodes. And you figure if they're all about an hour, maybe 33. That's like a full-time job. It's like 33 to 40 hours a week, and some of them are a little longer, some are a little shorter. Yeah. Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, well, most of them are over an hour,
right?
And some of them are an hour and a half.
Right, sure,
so, that's quite the commitment. Let's just put it that way.
Well, we appreciate everybody who takes the time, and once again, I'm gonna beat this dead horse. Apple Podcasts. If you have an iPhone, even if you don't use it to listen to podcasts, you can still just click the Apple Podcast button, look up the show and leave a review. If you don't have an iPhone, you can download iTunes on any computer, any PC at all. And if you're curious about like how to do that, you can just, even if you just Google how to leave a rating if I don't have, an iPhone, there's plenty of other articles who have explained to people how you can leave podcast reviews if you're not an Apple Podcast user. So please consider doing so. Thanks to everybody who's done that in 2023.
Jake, I'm the cook here in our home for our family of 5. And we pride ourselves on establishing for our children the concept that eating dinner around the kitchen table every night as much as possible is an important aspect of our family.
Sure.
So most nights of the year, you can find me in my kitchen right around 4:30, 5 o'clock, getting ready to cook dinner for my family. And that's when I do most of my podcast listening.
Right.
And because you chided me a few times over the years for not listening to episodes, because it's weird. It's really weird to listen to myself. I think most people don't like to listen to themselves or watch themselves. A lot of actors don't watch their own movies. And I get that. I totally understand that. But because there have been times when I'm like, I need to review that episode, or I need to hear some aspects of what's going on. So I listen through my Echo Dot,
right.
Alexa. Right. I tell her to put on whatever it is I want to listen to. And I didn't set this, but I know there's a way you can. But now every 2 weeks, she alerts me whenever a new episode has posted. So you can do that too, folks. You can, some of the advantages of using the, Apple iTunes system is Amazon's connected to that in some way and will remind you when new episodes have dropped. So kind of cool.
That's great.
It always makes me laugh. It'll be a Friday afternoon and the little light will turn yellow and I'll ask you.
They'll let you know that your own show is airing. Yeah.
Yeah. And she's like, there's a new episode of Don't Quill the Messenger available. I'm like, ooh, that's so fun.
You know what? But I just want to mention really quickly, you talked about like actors having a hard time like watching themselves. I, as an actor, never had that problem because I'm wildly vainglorious. Would you like to read some emails?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, here we go. This is an email that came in. Oh, wait, let me get to it here. This one came in from John Plummer. And this one was in regards to the Phoenix and the Turtle. And they just wrote, Stephen, the latest episode with Mr. Cooper was a triumph. Please have him back when you can. The questions you posed at the outset, especially regarding the birth and parentage of Edward, were spot on. Thank you for continuing to follow this mystery by following the evidence wherever it leads, regardless of whatever might offend modern sensibilities, John. So thank you so much for that email, John. See, listen, we get a lot of emails like this, which are fantastic.
And that would make a great review. So, John, if you're listening, you could also go post that on a review site. But Philip Cooper, and I just recently in another episode at the end, the stuff that you call crap actually can be pertinent and interesting, folks, because at the end of one of the most recent episodes, I alerted everybody that Philip has some new work up on his website.
Oh, lovely.
And we may need to ask Philip to come back and do another episode this season to discuss some of his new work, some of the things that he has posted on his website.
There's an email from Dean Bradley. The subject is speculation. Hi, Stephen. Your last podcast, The Women of Will, featured your wife, Annie, who rightly berated the devious tactics of Stratfordian scholars who weave a tapestry of speculation, trying to tie the threadbare biography of Stratford Will to the grand themes and knowledge of the plays. They go on to say, I've listened to every episode of your show and immensely enjoy what you do. A shout out from the Antipodes. Cheers, Dean. That was from Dean Bradley.
I love Dean. I love his sign off there.
Yeah.
We mentioned earlier he's in New Zealand. And that's such a great reference to the quote from Hermia in A Midsummer Night's Dream. The Antipodes is a great way to describe the bottom half of the planet. I have one here, short and sweet, from Michael Hannigan.
Okay.
And he says, hello, Quiller types. Love the podcast and all it has opened up for me. Would very much like to receive the newsletters. Keep asking questions. And that allows me to say, remember, Quillers, you can subscribe to the email newsletter directly from the homepage of the website. And remember, we do not share our list with anyone. We rarely send more than one email per month, and we will not spam you. We absolutely promise. So you can go to don'tquillthepodcast.com, click right there on the link, and add yourself. But if you want to send me an email and ask to be added, I'll do that too.
Here's one from Troy Stelzer, who I believe might have been our December Quiller of the Month, because the subject is Quiller of the Month. Yeah, baby. Hello, Stephen. Your podcast is just the best. I wouldn't be an Oxfordian without you. In parenthetical, and Mark Anderson. And my enjoyment of the Shakespeare canon would still be stunted without the broader understanding of the biographical details, source materials, and the voices of the author, which I've learned from you and your wonderful guests over the years. When Jake read my name as Quiller of the Month for December, I was super excited. I've been with you for 3+ years, and I've listened to all of the episodes at least once, and several of them 3, 4, or 5 times. You are a gifted interviewer, and it is a delight to hear your mastery of the canon, passion, and preparation manifest into deep engagement with your guests. With you at the helm and in the long-form interview structure, you maximize the potential of your guests and their messages. They go on to say, I can't wait to actually see you perform Shakespeare's Treason in my hometown of Minneapolis next spring.
Well, Troy, can't wait to see you with us in Minneapolis in April. And what a great segue to remind everyone that tickets are selling. And in fact, we've already sold half of the available group rate tickets for the Shakespeare Brittle Glory Marathon package that we arranged with the Guthrie Theater, where our event will be held. Remember, our event will include a Thursday night cocktail reception, the Friday event, William Shakespeare Esquire, and Shakespeare's Treason on the McGuire stage of the Guthrie. And then on Saturday, we will all together, those who have purchased tickets for the Brittle Glory Marathon package, we will all together view 3 of Shakespeare's history plays in order in a row. Richard II, Henry IV, parts 1 and 2 combined, and then Henry V, with lunch and dinner in between. Lunch and dinner is not part of the package. We will be announcing to those who are ticket holders where to meet us to have lunch and dinner, and then it'll be order off the menu type of a thing. But we're already half sold on those, which also means that the hotel room rate that we secured at the Historic Depot Hotel just down the street from the Guthrie, literally like stone's throw.
Right.
That means those discounted rooms are filling up as well. So if you're planning on joining us in April in Minneapolis, you're going to want to go to the website monumentalshakespeare.com, and get registered, because those Brittle Glory package rates are going to disappear. There are plenty of seats for the event on Friday the 12th, because the theater can hold up to 700 people. So
right.
Not too concerned about that, but the room rates, we only were able to secure so many rooms, and we're only able to secure so many group tickets for the 3-play package.
Got it.
At the Guthrie. So folks, jump on that and join us in April for our inaugural Quiller event.
Love that. Also, what Troy's email that we just read reminded me of, and see, we were so caught up with all the stats and the emails and things. It's the first episode of the month. Don't we need to pick a Quiller of the Month today?
You're right. We absolutely do need to pick the first Quiller of the Month for 2024.
Do you want to just dive in and do that right now?
We might as well. You have the Wheel o' Destiny ready?
Yes,
I know you can pull it up on your computer pretty fast.
While you were touting the event just then, I quickly threw all the eligible names into our wheel of names here. So if you're not sure what this is, first off, if you're a first-time listener and you've made it this far through the episode, congratulations. You have just nerves of steel. I don't know how you found any of this entertaining, but go back and listen to other episodes where we actually talk about the authorship question. So if you don't know what this is, each and every month we put all of the eligible Quillers who are Patreons of the appropriate tier over at patreon.com/don'tquillthemessenger into this random name generator, this wheelofnames.com. And the winner selected at random here gets an item of their choosing from the shop over at the Don't Quill the Messenger shop. And of course, the clout of being the Quiller of the Month for that month. It's just a little way that we try to give back to all of the fantastic patrons who allowed the show to continue. So without further ado, do you want me to spin this wheel and see who the Quiller of the Month, the first Quiller of the Month for the month of January 2024 is?
Are you going to put in the fun fanfare music?
I always do. And the Quiller of the Month is Clare Jaget. Quiller Clare. I've still never figured out how to pronounce the last name. Is it Jaget? Is it Jaget?
Yes, it's Jaget.
Jaget. Clare Jaget.
Yes.
Claire, see, even though you corrected me, I still said it wrong. I think I've butchered every single Quiller's name. I don't think there's a single
You know what?
Quiller.
She is a sweetheart of a person, and I'm sure she doesn't care if you mispronounced her last name a little bit. Her husband, Mark, he might.
Well, I apologize, Mark, on behalf of Claire. Claire, congratulations, and thanks for your continued support of this program. Keep your eye on your email. As always, we email all of the Quiller of the Months to let them know how they can claim their prize. And congrats for being, I'm a sucker for the stats. I have the whole history of all of them here. And it looks like the last time Claire was Quiller of the Month was March of 2023. So this is her second time being Quiller of the Month. She was in my birth month last year. So congrats, Claire. And again, thanks
congratulations,
everybody.
Claire. And thank you for your continued patronage as one of our Patreon patrons. And as Jake mentioned, folks, you can learn all about how to do that at our Patreon page, which you can also access right off of the homepage of the website, don'tquillthepodcast.com. It's a little red button that says Patreon. Click it, and it'll take you where you need to be. I have one here from Sandi Boney. And again, as far as last names, I'm never sure if it's Bonnie or Boney because there's only one N.
Boney, yeah, exactly.
Right? Sandi says, "Hi, Stephen. I just listened to the 2 most recent episodes of Don't Quill the Messenger, and they confirmed that there is nowhere I would rather be on April 12th, 2024 than at the Monumental Shakespeare event in Minneapolis." She goes on to talk about the other sightseeing options that you can do when you're in Minneapolis. And John and I talked about those when we did the episode about the event. She mentions having journeyed to see the play By My Will at the Atlanta Shakespeare Company, Shakespeare Tavern, after hearing the episode we did featuring Jeff Watkins, the artistic director there, because she lives close enough that she was able to make it out there to see the play. Sandy's a lawyer herself, and she mentions, as you have noted before, attorneys are some of the more fervent skeptics of the Stratford theory once we examine the paltry amount of evidence used to support that case. She says that she soon dove in headfirst to the pool of information and began reading and researching, buying lots of Oxfordian books and listening to every single episode of Don't Quill the Messenger. I have gained a wealth of knowledge from the podcast, and I think of your guests. This is my favorite part. I think of your guests as a circle of friends who share the same passion that I do for the truth to be accepted. My bookshelves are now groaning with old and new publications, so much so, in fact, that I purchased a new bookcase devoted solely to Shakespeare and Oxfordian-related books. So there you have it, Sandi. We look forward to seeing you in Minneapolis in April as well. She closed with, "Thank you again for all your time and dedication to Don't Quill the Messenger and for the high level of professionalism exhibited in the episodes. I, for one, will keep asking questions." And Sandi, I want to take this opportunity to say that when you mention, I'm highly humbled by your comments and your praise. Thank you so much. But when you mention the professionalism of the episodes, I'm assuming that it's not just my interviewing style and the way we work with our guests, but also the quality of the episodes, the way that they are edited and put together, and the tightness of them, how they are presented in a timely fashion on every platform. And that is completely due to producer Jake and being a part of the Dragon Wagon Radio family. which for the last 5 years we have been so proud to be a part of.
Well, thank you, Steve. Appreciate that. And thank you so much for that fantastic email. Saying there's a few things there she mentioned that tie into some stuff that I'd love to talk about.
Sure.
She, as you mentioned, she's a lawyer, and you spoke about, lawyers tend to be really good skeptics in this instance. I don't know if it's simply because of my current temporary relocation. I'm sure we spoke a little bit about it on the show. That I'm in the Northeast now. I'm in New York. My fiance and I, former guest of the show, Alexandra Hoy, had to come to the Northeast to deal with some family stuff, some work stuff. And so we're here, and I'm surrounded by my family for the first time in a long time. And I don't know if it's simply because of that, but I've been having so many more conversations about the authorship mystery since I've been here. And I do think part of it is my sister, Celia Gordon, is one of New York State's top rated defense attorney. Celia has dedicated the majority of her adult and professional life into unlawful convictions. She was the lawyer, one of the two primary lawyers, her and her partner Bob Gottlieb, for an incredible gentleman named John Adrian Velazquez, who there's a fantastic award-winning podcast out there called Letters to Sing Sing, all about John Adrian, who was unlawfully sentenced to 25 years to life for a murder that he very clearly did not commit, and that every piece of evidence points to it being a different person. She was part of his team. She's featured on that podcast. In any case, now I'm just bragging about my sister because she's the best and I love her. But she's such a critical thinker, and it's such a passion for her that while the Shakespeare authorship mystery isn't necessarily an unlawful conviction, it's sort of the opposite. Instead of somebody, being tried for a crime they didn't commit, it's somebody being praised for works that they didn't enact, or do you know what I mean? And so
I do. And in fact, that approach to the topic has been a great way to sort of disprove what the proof is, in the sense that William Shakespeare of Stratford could not be found guilty of the crime of writing the works of Shakespeare if he were to be charged in any court of law for that crime. And if you look at the works of Shakespeare as being potentially treasonous in some ways, and if he were brought to court or before the Privy Council with the accusation, he would very easily be able to claim innocence, and there would be no evidence whatsoever to prove him guilty of having committed that crime.
I don't think I've ever heard that twist on how it's proven, but that's kind of exactly where my brain is going, and why I kind of really want to spark her interest in this. She does not know or care about the work of Shakespeare. Do you know what I mean? Like and no, this isn't a slight on her. Her life never
blasphemy,
but in a way,
heretic
to a much lesser degree, like that's how I was when I was presented with this program and becoming the producer of it. While I definitely loved the works of Shakespeare that I was familiar with, I am hardly a Shakespeareophile, or whatever the phrase is, a bardophile. There's all sorts of terms, right? I did not have an attachment to the work that someone like you or I'm sure a lot of your listeners and a lot of the guests do. My fascination, and I've spoken about this on the show before, really comes from the real life mystery. And so I have had this idea because I have spoken with you for years, Stephen, about that being the in for a whole other demographic of people, where, yes, those who love Shakespeare are going to be interested in the authorship mystery. But I also think that those who love true crime and those who love, historical mystery in general should also be wildly invested in this, even if they don't know a single word of Shakespeare. If they don't know who the lead characters in Romeo and Juliet are, they should still care about this mystery, because it's such a part of human history. And so in talking with my sister about this and about the show that I produce about the authorship mystery, I was trying to think of a starting point for her, like what we were talking about earlier, about listen to this, listen to that. Well, there's a 101. I recently listened back to the 101 episode with Bryan Wildenthal, who's fantastic. And he's fantastic in that episode. But in the 101 episode, it is very much so an Oxford 101.
Correct.
It's not a authorship mystery 101, as much as I think I even recalled it being. And I had this idea a year ago, which is kind of a bummer because I was never able to make it happen, especially because it would have been great if it would have been the 101 episode to do a new 101. And maybe this is just my vainglorious nature continuing, but I'd love to be a part of it because I would love a great 101 for people who have never even heard of the mystery, who don't know any Shakespeare, about why we have potentially got this wrong. And so I've been having this conversation a lot, and I've been sort of struggling even within our show, which is about probably the best resource out there for people who are curious on this, to go check this one specific thing out. So I'm pitching to you at some point, whether this year or wherever, and it doesn't even necessarily need to be one of the weekly or bi-weekly episodes. It could just be something that exists outside of that schedule. A new 101.
So I have a couple of thoughts on
Yes.
that, Jake, listening to you explain. And the first thought is it's very interesting that you mentioned Bryan Wildenthal. And in fact, doing another episode with Bryan is an idea because he has a book that he published a couple years ago now that talks about and notes all of the references throughout history that people made about the idea that the identity of William Shakespeare is a pseudonym and that there is a hidden person behind that name.
Oh, this is my favorite.
Yes, his work does conclude with some Oxfordian aspects of it, but it truly encompasses and begins with the evidence that we have that people of the time and throughout history have known that the man from Stratford was not the guy.
Right.
And so there's one angle that we could do.
I love
and of
that.
course, Bryan is a lawyer.
Yeah,
and
he's perfect.
He's a law professor.
Especially if he's part of the original 101 too. To bring him back for a new 101 would be fantastic.
Yeah, and he's a patron of the show as well, and so I'm sure I could call him up and talk to him about and bounce some ideas off of him. We could put something together, no problem. Another idea that came to my mind, and I talked about Elizabeth Winkler's going to be coming back, but she has this magnificent section in her book that talks about the creation of the English departments in the halls of academia and how that really shaped how we got this wrong.
Oh,
and why, and the reasons for turning Shakespeare into sort of a religion of sorts in these halls of academia. And she explains it in such a way in her book that I can't recall ever seeing anywhere else. And it really opens your eyes as to how this falsehood got propagated about this guy from Stratford.
Right.
And so that also could be an episode in itself. Where did we go wrong?
Right,
How did it turn sideways throughout history?
By the way, her book is, out of all of the books of the guests we've had and all of the stuff that I'm aware of, is the easiest to find. I have tried finding many books about authorship at many of the New York bookstores, and I have absolutely struggled. People don't even know what section of the store it would be.
Well, and that's a great way that listeners can sort of join the grassroots movement to help share the mystery. Is you can go to, and I know we mentioned this on a previous episode, and I believe it was Sandi who suggested that I share this with everyone, and that is you can go to your local library and request that they start stocking some of these books and help guide your local librarians to creating a section in your library about the Shakespeare authorship mystery. But you can also go to your local bookstores and ask them to start a section as well. Start requesting that they order certain books. Now, of course, for a bookseller, the only way you're going to be able to accomplish that is you're going to have to buy one.
Sure, of course.
Because they're not going to start stocking books unless they're actually going to make some money off of it.
I've been trying to, get my collection going here, and I don't want to buy stuff on Amazon. I know it's probably the easiest route, but I'm still trying to be a good. I'm trying to be a good anti-capitalist here, okay? And so I'm trying to go to, and I mean, man, I can tell you,
support local. Your local bookseller is an asset to your community, and so instead of ordering a book online, go into your local bookstore and giving them. And I always recommend to folks pay cash. Save them that 3% cost that the bank is going to charge them for the transaction.
Yeah, absolutely.
It makes a lot of difference to small businesses when you do that. So, go to your local bookstore, support your local bookstore, pay cash for books, and then ask them to stock certain books.
Have you ever been to the Drama Bookshop in New York City here?
Not in New York. I've been, I don't even know if One Schubert Alley even exists anymore. It's been a long time since I've been to New York. But Samuel French in Hollywood was an awesome place to visit before that closed down. And again, like some of these sources are shutting down, and so support them.
Yeah, in LA, the Last Bookshop is sort of like the really big popular one in LA. So there's a place that's kind of, there's obviously in New York City here, there's absolutely tons of bookshops. But one of my favorite places is the Drama Bookshop, and it really focuses more on theater. There's an entire section where it's just plays, but it's also film and television, and I asked them like, where do you have stuff about the authorship mystery? And I might as well have unzipped my skull and just showed them my brain, because the confusion on like, what do you mean? And I was just like, do you have a section that speaks about like, because they have a whole Shakespeare, they have like a whole giant, obviously Shakespeare section. It's called the Drama Bookshop. No idea what I was talking about. Absolutely no idea. And I thought of all places, this is where I might be able to find, one or two of our guest books. And so needless to say, I asked them if they could potentially order some. They're like, they were able to find some through some sellers. But yeah, of all the places, the Drama Bookshop, no idea. Not even aware of the authorship mystery.
Well, and a good way to, a bookshop like that, a good way to turn them on to it is to share with them that once you understand the biographies of the potential candidates, and you don't even have to say the biography of Oxford, but understand the biography of Oxford, understand the biography of Bacon, understand the biography of Marlowe, understand the biography of Rutland, and you'll figure out that the reason why these candidates have risen to the top as potential candidates for the true author is their biographies fit the works better than this guy from Stratford. And as an appreciator of the works from a theatrical standpoint, it makes so much more sense. It's like I always say, knowing Arthur Miller's history helps you understand Arthur Miller's plays. Knowing Eugene O'Neill helps you understand his plays. You know what I mean? So I think that's super important.
Well, because there's definitely an inherent subtext. Any good writer will leave everything you need to know on the page. But with somebody like Shakespeare, I could only assume, just because of the interpretation of it is such it's contested amongst people who are all, Shakespeare experts, that having any additional knowledge can just be an absolute superpower in understanding some of the subtext and some of the nuance of character decisions and motives and all of the stuff that even as an actor, I go, I need all the information I can have.
Well, and I mention this often whenever I'm in rehearsals for a production, and I'm giving direction to actors. Quite often, even though we use versions that have annotations and help describe and explain certain antiquated words or certain phrases from Elizabethan times, but then I'm providing extra direction to the actors about the interpretation of the lines and the relationships of the characters. And quite often an actor will turn to me and say, "How do you know that? I don't see, that's not here. It's not in our version. Do you have like the director's version?" They think I have like the teacher's handbook or something.
Yeah, of course.
And I always laugh and I say, well, and that always opens the door to discussion of authorship, because then I have to explain, well, if you know the biography of the writer, then you have insight into what he's trying to convey here and which character in Elizabeth's court he's lampooning or satirizing.
Right, of course. Yeah.
or the message he's trying to send to the Queen herself as the principal audience member for these dramas when they were first presented at court, long before a public audience ever saw them.
That audience of one. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
great ideas for some future episodes. I will definitely get into that.
The other thing that I've this past year, I've watched like every available documentary, and I can ask Alexandra. It was a few weeks ago where I watched something. I don't want to speak about what it was because I don't want to sound derogatory to anybody, but I have spoken very clearly about how my approach to the entire thing is to ensure you are as unstuffy as possible and less pretentious as possible. And I told Alexandra after watching some of the documentaries, and of which the information is great, and I agree with it, how wildly unentertaining it could all be and how a bit pretentious. And I told Alexandra, I think I might have to make a documentary.
Okay.
I think that whether or not it's a feature length or it's just a fun side project that I start to work on, I told her, I was like, I have yet to find somebody discussing this in that medium in a way that I would like it to be discussed and I want to see it discussed and that it would be most effective to me. And so my history as an artist has always been, if I don't see it represented, then I need to go and create it myself. So there is a small possibility that I might have to write.
Well, you have all the skill sets. I mean, I know most of our listeners know that you are a filmmaker. And if you haven't seen Jake's film Pinch, you need to watch it. You can find it. Tell them how to find it, Jake.
Very kind of you. It's available on Amazon. You can buy it. I believe you can rent it. I'm not sure. There's been a lot of changes throughout the few years, but yeah, it is available, distributed through Amazon and potentially on Tubi. I'm not sure. It keeps changing. But that's very kind of you. Thanks for saying that. I was not trying to plug myself as a filmmaker, but yeah, I don't know.
No, but it's about credential, right?
Yes,
it's not like you out of the blue going, I'm going to now become a filmmaker, but you are a successful filmmaker. And so now you're talking about a potential new project as a filmmaker. And
I have done non-narrative documentary work in short form for a very long time. I've worked on documentaries for quite a while, and I definitely feel like there is an approach out there. I've spoken with you about this for ages. Adam Ruins Everything. That brand of approach. That sort of like, I would love to see humorous reenactments. I would love to see some levity in some of this in any capacity, in a way that might appeal to a different demographic, and that's sort of my goal. My goal moving forward as an anti-Stratfordian.
This could be a History Channel series waiting to happen, Yeah. And P.S. we have within our ranks an Emmy award-winning documentary writer named Hank Whittemore.
Absolutely.
A lot of people don't know that about Hank. Is that he's got not one but two.
Yeah.
Might even be three, but he has more than one Emmy for writing, for television, for documentaries. So, he could certainly give some hints and tidbits there. There's no doubt. P.S. Hank will be in Minneapolis in April with us, folks, as he will be there to watch me have the honor of bringing to life his work, Shakespeare's Treason, for the stage. And I'm super honored that Hank has trusted me with the work, and I'm going to be thrilled that he's going to be in the audience there to watch me perform it.
That's fun. Will it be the very first time that it will be staged?
It'll be the very first time that someone has performed it that wasn't Hank.
Sure, that's what I mean. Yeah. But has he performed it
in this version of it that is now created for any actor to take on? Because the original version was very personal,
right?
And
it was a one-man show for Hank, about Hank, with Hank. Yeah, of course.
Right, and you remember one of our earliest episodes was how we hatched the plan, the idea that it needed to be reworked for any actor to perform, and now here it's going to finally happen in April.
That's exciting.
And talking about that, just a couple other quick emails. Richard Joyrich wrote to me about some early glitches with the registering for the April event, and I want to assure you, Richard, and anybody else who may have had any trouble, those initial glitches with the email with the website for registering have been worked out, and folks are successfully registering left and right. So go ahead to, once again, it's monumentalshakespeare.com to get registered for that April event and be there with all of us when this all happens. Did you see the email from Marilyn Pilar? Or maybe it's pronounced Pillar. Pillar.
Yes, I have that here. I do.
That there's a couple. The first one, I think she talked about that P.S. Marilyn's a new listener. She just discovered the podcast this year.
Welcome, Marilyn.
And
thank you.
Yeah, and she wrote to tell me that she was working her way through the entire podcast and enjoying it immensely. And then she says here, I finally got to 2020.
I love that.
There are folks who are slowly but surely kind of catching up. And again, to reiterate what Jake said, which is great advice, which is if you're going to share it with others, lead them to your favorite episodes first. That's a great idea and a wonderful plan. And then make sure to tell them that it's okay to be listening to the latest episodes and be caught up as far as that goes, and then go back and sort of add in the older episodes. It's not a Netflix series, so they won't get lost by diving backwards.
Not at all. And, another thing that I think maybe come next year, this time when you and I sit down for 6, which I'm sure we will, it'd be a good time to sort of look back. And if you're listening, listeners, and something pings you in an episode or a question comes up and something, write us and send us stuff. I feel like that's one thing that we've talked about doing, but we've never successfully done. That's been like, we didn't extrapolate on this one small thing in a conversation. We glossed over it and we really wanted to come back. And of course, guests can always come back and extrapolate stuff, but there's always new stuff to talk about, So I'd love to do an episode where we sort of pick up some threads that we didn't pull, or, some topics that got dropped because of the conversational nature of the show. Sure.
Another person who will be joining us in Minneapolis is Sandi Paulus. And she says, many thanks for all you do. Can't wait to meet you in person. Sandi, same. Can't wait to meet you too.
So we have a lot of Sandys and Johns that listen to the show. Did you notice that?
I have.
It's such a strange, I don't think John makes sense because that seems to be the percentage. There's so many Johns out there as far as names for men percentage wise. I didn't think Sandi was so popular that the pie chart of Don't Quote a Messenger listeners of all women, that there would be so many Sandys.
How about Janine, which is a female variation of John? Janine Clark wrote to this year to say that she wanted to thank me and Dorothea Dickerman. She says this was, and I'm assuming she's talking about the Begin episode.
Right.
She says, this was one of my first episodes of your show. See what happens when you find an episode that is out of order, but really speaks to you. It really inspires the listener, right? One of the first episodes of your show, and I can't wait until you have her back to listen to more. I've been having so much fun learning and diving into this fascinating question, mystery, and pulling in friends, family, and fellow history lovers on board. Thank you, Janine. We appreciate that. It truly is maddening. We've been lied to for so long, and exhilarating. We have the opportunity to discover this all together at a grassroots level. Thank you for all the good works and all the great info. Wow. Yeah. Just a great episode. From Olympia, Washington, Janine Clark. And Janine, I want to tell you, I recently spoke with Dorothea. We tried to get her to come to Minneapolis in April, but it just so happens that she and her husband, who are both lawyers, are the coordinators of their law school's major class reunion happening this year. And it happens to be going on the exact same weekend. So
they can reschedule, can't they? Come on.
They could be in two places at one time. But we will be getting back to Dorothea about doing another episode this season if we can. Dawn wrote to me to say, are any of the usual suspects going to be present at your event? It really needs to have some luminaries there besides redoubtable and renowned Maestro Steve. Well, Dawn, thanks for the backhanded compliment there, Dawn. What I can tell you is we are going to have some trained Shakespearean actors there and some actors who are also lawyers who will be presenting the opening and closing arguments, we're calling it.
That's fine.
That bookend each of the major scenes from the canon that the actors will be presenting live on the Maguire stage at the Guthrie. And those include, I can tell you, there's the famous Kill All the Lawyers scene from Henry VI, Part 2. There is the famous trial scene from Merchant of Venice. There is the famous Gravedigger scene from Hamlet. We're looking at pulling a scene from Measure for Measure if we have enough time in the time frame that we have the event, the venue rented for. And the format will be, there'll be an opening argument that kind of explains to the audience what they're about to see and why the legal aspects are so important. You'll watch the scene performed live by trained Shakespearean actors. And then at the end of the scene, there'll be a closing argument given that explains the legal ramifications of that scene and how it demonstrates the knowledge of the writer about the laws of the time and about how some of those laws and the laws that are referenced in the scenes still are used today in our legal structure of modern times. So it's going to be a great event and great series and plenty of performance as well as information combined together, which I can't recall ever seeing or even hearing about as part of any Shakespeare authorship mystery event of the past. So you're going to be thoroughly entertained and educated all at the same time.
That's how you do it.
Yeah. One more I wanted to share before we start coming to a close here is Tim Price from the UK said, keep up the good work at Don't Quit the Messenger. It just keeps getting better. And this is something important. He says, loving the non-tenured professor guests you are finding who are the real experts. Really enjoyed the Stalking Shakespeare episode. That was with Lee Durkee about his novel.
Right.
Immediately bought and read Lee's book and thoroughly enjoyed that. Ditto Taboo to Doubt. Bought a copy of that for my brother as well.
Right.
Trying to persuade him and his family to take note of the Shakespeare authorship mystery. 2 lawyers, 2 civil servants, and 1 actor. So I think it would be of interest to them all.
Yeah, I mean that's common ground if there is one.
Right, but then he says here, and this kind of goes along with some of the things that you were saying earlier, Jake, about adding a new 101, and he says we should write up and publish a list of Don't Quill the Messenger tenets. Keep asking questions. You don't have to be a tenured professor to be a Shakespeare authorship expert. All views on Shakespeare authorship are listened to and discussed here in this series, in this format.
Right.
And the biography of the writer is the key to understanding the works and performing the works. He says there are more points you make on a regular basis, but maybe we should have them all in one place. So Jake and I will talk about if there's a spot on the website that we might be able to.
Sure, that could be interesting.
Put something like
it's tough.
that.
That's also tough.
And
having to edit that list down, because I'm sure we could probably come up with 1,000 of them.
Yeah, that is a good point. Then he suggests, and we're going to be looking into this. So Tim, it's coming, I promise, an episode on the evidence for Freemasonry in the works of Shakespeare.
Oh, interesting.
And there is an old book from like the early 20th century, like 1904, 1906 on this topic. It's out of print, but I am searching to get a copy in my hands. You can find it online in digital form.
Right, of course.
But I'm trying to get a copy of it because I'm old and I like to have tangible books in my hands to prepare for episodes.
Right.
So
I also can't. I'm not as old. I mean, you are significantly older than me. Everybody should know that. But I also like to have a physical thing because I won't read it if I don't have it physically. People have been like, "Oh, I got you a thing, and I got you like a gift card for like a digital book," and I'm like, "Great!" And then I'll buy it, and then I will never read it, whether it's on like a Kindle or iPad. I just won't. But if it's physically in front of me and I could turn the page and crease it and do all the things, then I'm like, yeah, of course. There's something about the need for it to be tactile. And
one final email from Lori L. And this also speaks to what you were talking about with regards to a new 101. She says, I've listened to nearly all of the podcasts and have enjoyed them immensely. I have a number of my favorites on my MP3 player and listen to them again and again on my walks. They're always interesting the second and third time. My suggestion is this. Could you ask your experts to each come up with 20 or so top reasons why Oxford is Shakespeare according to the evidence they can cite? Well, I would say, Lori, if you haven't looked at Hank's 100 Reasons, they're all right there, pretty well explained. She says each expert or panel of experts could develop their ideas based on their evidence, explaining to the listeners in a fresh way. What I'm looking for is a podcast or episodes to share with friends to get them to see the logic of the assertion about Oxford being the author. I know the first few podcasts you did address this requirement to some extent, but this need is even more necessary now as your series has brought forward fascinating facts and ideas over the past few years. You could possibly extend this to 2 or 3 or even more episodes.
Right.
So that succinct ideas with the relevant supporting evidence would follow quickly upon each other to mount an overwhelming case to send to doubters. And she's not the first one, Jake. John Foss suggested this too. Is like we needed to do like a 5-episode intro series almost.
Yeah, but you know what?
Could be like part of your documentary idea.
I will say like that is leading towards the Oxfordianism of it all, which it does kind of sound like what she is asking for is just an audiobook version of Hank Whittemore's book. Right? Like that's kind of, because the reality is, and I'm not saying that there isn't more out there, but Hank really sort of, he did the work already. He put it all together in one spot. We just want to listen to it. Some people just don't like reading. Listen, I get it.
And Hank also has this awesome website where all of the reasons are there.
Right. Sure. Of course.
And explained as well.
I mean, listen,
on his website.
I don't, does Hank have an audiobook version of it? Because you literally have 2 actors right here. I have experienced reading audiobooks. I'm sure Steven has experienced as a broadcaster. You and I could just each take alternate reasonings and you and I could just make the audiobook version for him. And then let's just put that out and let him sell that. We should be doing that. I don't know why that's not a thing. But anyways, I digress. I totally get what you're saying.
Hank is also an actor and, we could work on that together, I'm sure.
Of course.
And make something like that happen.
I was just trying to be kind because it is sort of a long and grueling process, and I don't want to sign Hank up for doing something that's kind of really difficult and it's physically strenuous. I was just trying to be kind, but I digress.
Well, you know this more than anyone, and a lot of listeners know this, and many of my guests. One of the things that over the last 5 years of doing this, and 126 episodes later. One of the things that has continued to happen, and generally it's, just light bulb moments that occur within an episode, and it's part of the conversational nature of the episodes, is oftentimes I have a guest whom we're talking about their current work, and in that discussion, an idea pops in. And me, I commonly will say, well, you know what you need to do next? I'm one of those, what you need to do.
Right, of
type
course.
Of guys,
yes, 100%.
And they're like, how about, what you need to do is kiss off. But oftentimes there have been some great concepts discovered in an episode, including the reworking of Shakespeare's Treason, for instance, is one that has come to fruition. There are others where there have been guests who said, yeah, you know what? That's a great idea. I'm going to go do that. And then we've had them back when they've done it on occasion as well. So it's not uncommon for us to come upon some ideas for future plans to move this pendulum in the direction that we wish it to go, so that eventually, and hopefully in our lifetime, it will be known as a fact that the man from Stratford is not the real William Shakespeare.
Right. And, at the end of the day, that is where my passion lies in as the producer of this program. And it is like you, in the very first episode, in that first 101, you stated that you don't like the phrase anti-Stratfordian because you think it's the traditionalists trying to say that you're opposed to something, that you're anti-something, and that you prefer to just make it about Oxfordianism or Baconianism or Marlovianism or whatever that brand or that category is. But I'm going to argue against you in that I think personally, I think anti-Stratfordian is the best descriptor because it's the descriptor that groups all of the thought together. All of the different possibilities makes it one uniting force of this is wrong, of like it is not this guy. And while I understand anti is negative connotation and you much rather be pro something than anti something, because there isn't already a clarion call for that in pro, whether it's, I'm a pro pseudonym. We can call it that. We're pro pseudonymers or pro pen namers. The reality is everybody knows what Stratford means. And so I am anti-Stratfordian. That is my brand. I've said on the show before, while I definitely lean Oxfordian just because that's the bulk of the knowledge that I've received being a producer of this program, I don't have enough of an educated grasp on it all to definitively say I am that. I can definitely watch somebody talk about it and go, yeah, no, that makes sense. Of course. Yes, absolutely. In the same way that we will watch, a politically biased news and go, yes, of course, we agree with that. But it's because somebody more educated and eloquent is saying things that we can't do ourselves. So you kind of just go, yes, of course, you kind of become a follower in that sense. But anyways, I'm meandering. You get
and that's one of the reasons why I refer to fellow quillers as super sleuths, right? Because I think, anti-Stratfordian, pro-Oxfordian, pro-Baconian,
right.
Some people call it post-Stratfordianism.
Oh, I do like that. That's fun.
Yeah, it's kind of a clever way to eliminate the anti, right? Like, we're beyond you. We've moved on.
It also sounds like a really cool, like, subgenre of music as well. Like, yeah, I'm in this band. We're post-Stratfordianisms.
I like it. It's post-Stratfordian music.
Yeah.
It's the new romantic music of this era. Anyway, I think that ultimately what we can all agree on is that we're truth seekers.
Sure, of course.
We want the truth. And I think a lot of us, the reason why we're so passionate about it is that in some ways we're actually, even in some people and some of the emails even mentioned, I'm offended that this has been foisted upon me.
Right, sure.
I'm angry that I have been lied to about this.
Right.
It upsets me that more people in the world don't know the real truth of this, or have been lied to in this way, or deceived in this way, or don't see the logic through the blindness of the mythology that's been, put upon them. And I think we're in a place in the world where that's becoming more and more prevalent. Or maybe, circling back, maybe that has something to do with the fact that we are waking up to all the misinformation.
Yes.
And discovering that misinformation is not a new thing.
This is what I'm trying. Yes, this is my passion. This is what I'm trying to tell you. This is why I keep feeling the urge to make to make a documentary, is because it seems to be such a now conversation in a way that even 10, 15 years ago, it's just as fascinating, but almost less relevant, if that makes sense.
Well, and knowledge is power, and the people in power have controlled the knowledge throughout history.
There is also,
for some reason, we're like really waking up to that right now in this age.
100%. And I do think, I think as Americans too, we're realizing it because Americans, and again, I don't want to get into super depth politics. I'll just say this in passing. Like, as Americans, I think we always thought, oh, we figured it out. America figured it out. We can't have a dictator. It's not a thing. But then all of a sudden, we realized, wait, a bunch of the population is totally okay with a dictator. And so our reality around us is sort of being challenged of what we thought our country figured out. Right. So I think in America specifically, and to a degree, the people who are watching it from the outsides from other countries are seeing, oh, America isn't any different. And it is all very fragile and can come crumbling. Our realities are being challenged because of political realisms at the moment and social political realisms. And so I think it lends itself to this. It lends itself to this mystery. And I do also want to say to this about the challenges of labels and the challenges of perception. I've never said this before, and I'm going to get flack. Your listeners, you've made it. This is a really long conversation we've had. I apologize if it's been too long, but thanks for sticking with us. But now you're going to get rewarded. You're going to watch Steve and I have a real-time fight on the air.
Oh, boy.
Steve, I've never liked keep asking questions as the clarion call for the show. And the reason why I've never liked keep asking questions.
Well, it's a little late for that now.
Oh, I know that. Trust me, that ship, I'm standing on the dock and that ship is halfway across the ocean.
Sorry, buddy. You are sinking like the end of Titanic. Sorry, like we're watching you blub, blub, blub down into the frozen depths.
It's because it's shades of gray. I'm a big shades of gray guy. I don't like big, broad, black and white things. Is like, there are some questions that I would like stop being asked because there are some truths in the research that we see about Stratford where there are some questions I think we can stop asking. The guy didn't teach his daughters to read or write. We can stop asking some questions. Do you know what I mean? Like there's shades of gray.
Okay, I'm with you. I understand that. I get that.
Where it's like when I think of keep asking questions, I think of like a guy who's like, yeah, but do we really know the earth is round? Like, I think, you don't want to be grouped in with like the loons who have all these ridiculous conspiracy theories where they go, yeah, but you got to keep asking questions. And I'm like, no, there are some questions that we can stop asking. Is the world round? Yes, it is. We no longer need to ask that question. But I think it's about this specificity of ask more questions, ask different questions, ask better questions. Never stop having a curiosity. Never stop, highlighting answers. I know that none of these are a good catchphrase. And as a marketing guy, I get it.
And that is the feel and the theme of that statement, right?
And I get it. I totally get it.
I think all Quillers understand that when we say keep asking questions, what we're saying is keep questioning authority. And
sure, of
to
course.
touch on, what you're talking about, and again, to not stray into the politics of it, but history and politics are connected.
Totally.
And we're at risk of repeating doom if we don't learn from our mistakes. And in this sense, if you look through history, including this history, this Elizabethan Jacobean history, true dictatorship, true totalitarian government, in the case of Elizabeth or James, monarchy, the true power is in controlling the information.
Yes.
And so keep questioning authority, because a dictator cannot rule if he doesn't control the information.
I mean, you made a joke. You made a joke earlier about North Korea not having, listeners.
Exactly my point, right? That
yeah.
that was the point. Is
right.
In that sense, we do have these governments on the planet still to this day where the people who live underneath those regimes don't have access to anything but what the regime wants them to know. And I think that that's what caused this problem.
Right.
That we as the super sleuths are trying to change and undo. And I think we can be at great risk of having future problems if we're not constantly making sure that one side, one person, one government, one regime has control of all the information or the channels of information,
right.
or they're all in a media tunnel together,
right.
or whatever the descriptor you want to use.
Sure.
And I think that one of the reasons why this mystery speaks to us now so much in this moment is that we see those parallels.
Yeah,
and we realize that if we can undo this injustice, then we maybe can prevent future injustice.
And
I'll leave it at that.
No, and I totally get that. And obviously there's a little jest in me bringing up the catchphrase of the show that I produce. But, you understand the intent is it's like there's part of it that is about like the injustice of somebody getting credit for something that they don't deserve credit for, even if that person is long gone to enjoy that credit. But it's about the capitalistic hierarchy that now benefits from that. And listen, make your money, hustle all you want. If you grew up in Stratford and you want to sew, little crochet Shakespeare's to sell on Etsy because that's how you're going to make money, and you're going to say, hey, it's Stratford upon Avon. I get it. I'm a hustler. All right. I've been an artist who hasn't had a quote real job in over 2 decades. I understand the hustle, but there is something to be said about the exploitative nature of something that has created a religion around Stratford. And that's where my frustration lies. It's not that people are making money hand over foot about something that is essentially the Loch Ness monster. It's more so about the fact that you seemingly can't even find joy in the question. I would love to live in a world.
That's another layer of this, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is that we must look at the motivations of those who have continued to foist the myth upon us, right? And then we look at the motivations of those who are challenging the authority, who are asking the questions.
Right.
And, it requires money to do anything.
Sure,
we all
of
know
course.
that.
Right.
But Oxfordians are not getting rich off of their, if anything, if they're making anything, they're making pennies on the dollar for their time and their effort and the work that they're doing. Anybody who is an anti-Stratfordian, let's say post-Stratfordian, sure, isn't making money off of the work that they're doing.
Right.
They might be getting revenue to help support their habit, but they're not getting rich.
Sure.
Whereas Stratfordianism has created a lot of wealthy people over
100%.
the years. And so that motivation, questioning motivation is a big part of it too, I think.
Right. Yeah.
And
it's like,
one of the things that you touched on, and I'll steal this from another podcast host that I just heard recently, who said that one of the greatest sins in the world is stolen valor.
Right, of course.
And I think that's what we have a little bit of that in here too, right?
Absolutely.
Like it's stolen valor, and there's an injustice to that, and it's a terrible sin.
My train of thought earlier, something I was kind of alluding to and I was getting to in my mind was like, I think that I'd love to live in a world, in a society where we can revel in the unknown instead of argue over our own personal beliefs, right? And it's not too dissimilar to religion. Where like, I would love if part of what made the Shakespeare work and the canon and the art and all the stuff that inspired, one of the things that makes it so fascinating is that we don't know where it came from. Do you know? Like, I would love, and I understand you as an Oxfordian, you go, no, I want everybody to know it's Oxford, because I want, if you know, like what we were saying earlier, if you know the author, you know the work better. And while I can, as an artist myself and writer, I can totally understand that and appreciate that, I also wouldn't mind if this was just part of the joy of the work. Is that, did you know that we don't really know where it came from? And that's kind of part of what makes it exciting and fun. Whereas like, it's just, man, the species is rough. Humans just want answers. We desire to know the unknown at all times, always, because we have decided that.
Now you sound like some Stratfordians who have said this is a reason not to keep digging. This is a reason to stop asking questions.
But I don't sound like them, because
by finding the answers, you're ruining it for the people who love to fantasize about whatever belief they want to have about it.
Well, you know what?
Romanticized they want Shakespeare to be in their minds, right? That is one argument against.
Sure, but from their point of view, though, that's to say, don't disprove our guy. And I really want to disprove their guy. That's the starting point. That's the launching point.
It's the antagonist did you.
And listen, always a heel, baby. Always a heel pro wrestler. At the end of the day, like, it's more about the disproof. And yes, of course, if the truth could ever come out and we can actually figure out if, you've mentioned this all the times, like that smoking gun, if we could just have that smoking gun, the will of De Vere or whoever, or whatever that thing is, that piece of paper where it says, the piece of paper where De Vere or whoever was coming up with his pseudonym and he tried out a bunch of different things and wrote it. If we could just find that piece of paper where he wrote like, shuffle spear. No, that's not good. Shake a weapon. No, I don't like that.
Shakespeare.
Pen?
No,
yeah, exactly. George
Jonathan Shakespeare. No, I don't.
Bartholomew
I don't like
Shakespeare. Don't like the look of that. I don't want it to. Yeah, exactly.
Ezekiel Shakespeare.
Him writing like
that's not good.
Yeah. If we could find that, that'd be great. Of course, that'd be great, because who doesn't want to know this great mysteries finally solved? But for me, it's like I said, it's more about just like bringing the mystery to the forefront, because I think that's culturally where we are as a people. It's like, let's try to celebrate this a little bit and celebrate some of the unknown, instead of trying to put ourselves into a camp of some sort that goes like, I'm just going to point fingers because it's easy and fun, and it gets,
So
it gets reactions.
I'll close with this analogy, Jake, and I think it's I hope it's as profound. I hope when I say it, it sounds as profound as it feels in my mind. But I just recently watched, I love documentaries too, and I just recently watched one on the James Webb Telescope.
Okay.
Right. It took 25 years to launch that to have it built, to test it, to get it ready, and to launch it. People spent their entire lifetimes and careers with NASA with that project from start to finish. Many of them.
Right.
More than 10,000 people worked on that project. And they successfully launched the world's greatest, largest, most powerful telescope ever conceived, invented, created, and placed into space. Further away, 1 million miles away from the Earth than any object ever has been able to orbit. And the first photos are back, and we've seen some of them. And the truth is, we really don't know anything more about the universe than we did before all of that work was done.
Sure.
And this
right,
may be one of those things. This could possibly be one of those things. Nothing about the photos we get back from the James Webb Telescope have confirmed any theories better than we knew before about how the universe was created and what the universe really is and whether there's life out there. And, we see more, but we don't actually know more. And that could be where this mystery ends someday. Who knows? I hope not.
Right.
And I hope in my lifetime that we see more. I hope, and I know people who have spent 25 years on this to only feel like they're James Webb. But in the meantime, because it is our nature and because we are humans and because we do want to know and we do love a mystery and we do want to solve all the mysteries of the universe. In the meantime, we have no choice but to keep asking questions.
I see what you did there. And I respect you.
Thanks, brother. Thanks, brother. Much love to you.
Right back at you.
Thank you, fellow Quillers, for joining us for this anniversary episode. Happy 5th anniversary, Jake. Happy anniversary, Quillers. And as always, thank you for joining us.
If you've enjoyed today's episode, please leave a rating and review in your podcast player. For even more, visit our website, don'tquillthepodcast.com. There you can find official merchandise in our shop, as well as a link to our Patreon. This show is made possible by people like you. We hope you'll consider showing your support by becoming a monthly patron, where you'll receive bonus material and tons of exclusive perks. You can also join in the conversation on our Discord and by following us at Don't Quill the Pod on all social media. All of this can be found at don'tquillthepodcast.com, don'tquillthepodcast.com.
Dragon Wagon.